Hi, guys. So thank you, everybody, for staying late on the second day. Really appreciate you being here. And before I start, I just want to say one very important thing. The organizers of this conference have put in an incredibly hard amount of work. So why don't we just do one round of applause for the organizers and the incredible work that they've done. While my slides load, let's see if I can do this. All right. So while we're waiting for the slides to load, let me say one more thing. I think it's very critical to remember while we're here just the way physics works. You know that light travels faster than sound. So typically speakers appear brighter before they start talking. So I just want to keep that in mind as I'm standing here to tell you the very beginning of a very, very interesting innovation story. But I think the most interesting stories I've heard have been out there today. I think the way to think about where we stand is to think about what it is that we're trying to do together. A big part of our world is trying to get innovation to be the center, the driving activity of the future. We know today that the world can only be saved and will only be saved through innovation. And we need to do that in a way that brings together our joint efforts, the efforts of universities, the efforts of small businesses, the efforts of government, and the efforts of companies. I think we want to do that in a system that makes sense for the whole world. We want to make the world a significantly better place. Hey guys, folks backstage, any chance we could get the slides up? So while we're waiting for that to come on, let's see if I can sort of take you through an interesting part of the story. The very idea behind what it is that makes humans powerful. It's very interesting to think about why we're here and what it is that made humans the dominant species on this planet. This is something that drives us as we go forward. It turns out that there are two different ways to collaborate in the animal kingdom. You can collaborate very flexibly, but in small numbers. So think about the collaboration of wolves. Wolves can collaborate only in very small groups where they intimately know one another in packs. There's another type of collaboration that works very well in the animal kingdom, and it's called large-scale, non-flexible collaboration. And this is what you see when you think about ants and bees, the social insects. So these are large-scale collaboration efforts. So animals will build a beehive or an ant farm, and they'll do that in such a way that will completely do the same thing everywhere they do it. And they can't change their structures. These structures are rigid. So we have these two models. We have the large-scale inflexible collaboration, and we have the small-scale flexible collaboration. And it turns out that what makes humans special, and this was discovered by a sociologist named Yuval Noah Harari, and gives a great TED Talk on this, but it turns out that humans combine these two. Humans are best able to work flexibly and in large numbers. So we're able to change the world, and this is how we do it. So I want to tell you the story of how the world was changed in a place called Cambridge, Mass. So oftentimes when you've heard the CIC story, we come out of Cambridge, based in Kendall Square, right next to MIT, and oftentimes people assume that this is always going to be, of course it was always going to be the center of innovation activity in our world, because clearly settled next to one of the world's preeminent research universities, we were always going to be this way. It turns out that that's actually not the case. Up until the 1970s, the area around Kendall Square was basically similar to, I think what you could say, where you would think about Warsaw in the 1980s. So a lot of older buildings, a lot of parking lots. I'd love to show you the picture, but the slides aren't loading. This is an area where the entire setup didn't quite work. It was missing something. So in my job at CIC, I get to travel around the world and look at innovation ecosystems. And I've been to a number of cities and seen what they're doing. And thinking about that gives me a framework to approach the world. I call this the glue index framework, and you'll see why. So for me, cities are composed of three fundamental components. Number one is the physical infrastructure of the city. And some of this infrastructure is human, and some of this infrastructure is made by man. So when you look at a city like Krakow, here we are, there's a river, we have the roads, we have the trains, we have the airports. So some of these things were made by humans, and some of these things were made by nature, and we combine them, and that is the physical environment which we live in. So this is the first factor that makes up a collaborative environment. Number two is the human infrastructure, the people who live in these places. So most cities have a good bit of physical infrastructure, and they have a good set of humans who live in those places, including you guys who are here. But the third, and this is a very, very hard thing to measure, I call this factor glue. And I call it glue because I don't yet have a better name, and I would love to ask you to see if you can come up with a better name. If you could help me come up with one, I would love it. But I call this glue because this is the thing that sticks the humans together in the physical environment. It's the absolute required factor in working together. So glue is very hard to measure, but it's very easy to tell when you have it. You'll often hear, when you hear people talk about innovation ecosystems like Boston or Silicon Valley, that it turns out that when you land in that ecosystem, people will say this to you. I landed, I went to one meeting, and the person there introduced me to 10 other people, and they introduced me to 10 other people, and they introduced me to 10 other people, and I got my deal done, and it was all done in a day or two. That is a system that has high glue, where people know one another, where they work with one another, and they're willing to engage with one another. So this glue, this system, is incredibly important for building an innovative environment, one that works. This has been an important policy question. How do you build the glue? What is it about that glue? Because it clearly doesn't form all on its own. Where does it come from? And it turns out that there's a very interesting phenomenon in startup policy and entrepreneurship innovation policy. People often think about, what can we do for the founder? And they say, we want to make the world better for the founder. We want to give them access to resources, and we want to give them access to capital. And we really want to make their life easier. But it turns out there's another interesting theory, and it's called first follower. And the first follower says that it's not the founder that's important. It's the first person who follows them, who joins them on their quest, that makes it valid. Because I'm sure you've met startup founders, and you know we're all crazy people. We're going to stand on stage, and we're just going to dance. And we're going to dance all on our own. Because this is what we do. We're crazy people. We'll stand up on a stage and dance. But we won't, so long as we're dancing alone, we're just a crazy guy dancing on a stage. It's when we bring other people into the environment, that's what makes it real. So the thing that innovation ecosystems that work do is they have an incredibly interesting attitude towards risk. And the attitude towards risk is not that, this is very important, it is not that of the founders. The founders are crazy people. The founders will always be risk takers, and they will always love to work in this environment. What you need to do is you need to incentivize the other people. You must tell other people it is okay to work in startups, that you must join, you must be able to come to that environment. And part of this is where both government and policymakers and all of us have a joint role to play. We must tell people, we must educate them, and we must connect them. And this means events, this means connections, and this means internships and opportunities to work in startups so that people know how they can connect to this environment. That's number one. And number two, and this is the thing that makes it all worth, we must create social policy and social understanding that allows people to leave a safe job, whether they work for the government or whether they work in private industry, and join a startup. Startups are risky. They're hard. They oftentimes fail. And so not only do we need to provide the social resources that allow somebody to do that, but we must think it's okay when people fail. Yesterday, Pavel Boris stood on the stage and he asked you to join your hands and change the culture of risk in Poland. And I'm here telling you that this is a situation that we need to do, and we need to do it together. So CIC has been looking at Warsaw, and as we think about Warsaw, and as we think about Krakow, and as we think about Poland, we look at these innovation ecosystems and we say, the thing that we really need to do together is we need to change the attitude around risk. Because once people are more willing to go out there, once they're willing to risk everything, That's what helps change the environment, and that's how you start building the glue. Because if I'm okay connecting you to a startup that is looking for funding, not knowing a lot about you, if I can connect you into this ecosystem, then you will have a successful environment. And then once you will hear a story where somebody will land in Warsaw, and the story they will tell about Warsaw is they landed in Warsaw, they talked to somebody, and that somebody introduced them to a person, and that somebody introduced them to another person, and another person, and another person, and they found the funding, and they found the resources, and they found the talent that they need to build their company. And that's when the ecosystem becomes attractive, when it has the capital and the talent, and it has people who are able to do this. So this is very critically important to think about as you put together the ecosystem. So we have glue, and we have risk. And we think about, how do we do this combination? How does risk turn into glue? And this is very important because, again, this is where I ask you, you have to come in here. I want to ask you to do something interesting, and it's going to be difficult, but I want you to do it anyway. You have met somebody at this conference, and that somebody has given you business cards, and they have said, the thing that you have is a connection I want. And it's very easy to walk home, go home after this conference, and take that business card and not make that connection. But you have to do it. Because glue is not built by one person. Glue is built by all of us working together, gluing together the network of people who are here in Poland. And when we do that together, we will work. So I want to go back to this idea. When we build the environment, we start with the physical infrastructure. We think about the human environment, and then we tie it all together with glue. So innovation policy is changing the risk profile so that that glue works, so that it ties people together, and so that we can do this as one single organism that works together to build the future of innovation. The world will only be saved by technologies that have not yet been invented, technologies that have to be commercialized and brought to the world. We can't do this alone. At CIC in Cambridge, we have 1,100 startups and 1,500 in our spaces around the world. In these spaces, people are building the most interesting things. Everything from a notebook that you can microwave that erases all the content while digitizing it, to new types of nuclear reactors, to new types of solar power, to microphones that can hear and see. But this technology doesn't get there without the connections that you have, the networks that you have, and the people that you know. So I'm here to close my talk and say to you that we want to build a collaborative world where we work together flexibly, tied together with glue, and tolerant of risk. And so I ask you, please do that together, because it's the only way we can do it. That's the way we have impact in 2016. Thank you very much.